come into the borough. That's no problem. We can cover the beginning at another time. Allows more opportunities to come into the borough and to support our match funding. This time we also have a less prescriptive application process and services because you're experts by experience, and we want to be able to see what you're delivering, what you know your young people need and your children need, and what your service is able to deliver, as well as fostering partnerships and collaboration across the sector will be kind of a big part of what we're doing. The grant program itself, like I said, is core project costs for youth and play services. And really, the vision here and the goal is to just enhance what we know is already great quality service for children and young people, and to be able to expand that across all parts of the borough, and allow access to children and young people to all these amazing opportunities right on their doorstep. So a key part of this grant program is really to make sure that it is aligned with the priorities identified in the 2023 Youth Review. This was done by the council and consulted with local children and young people, parents, and the voluntary and community sector. And they identified 5 different priority areas. So I'll talk you through each of those in a little bit more detail. So one is inclusivity, and making sure that all children and young people feel valued. And that includes, but is not limited to LGBT young people, girls and young women, young people from a global majority background, young refugees, young carers, young people with special educational needs, and really making sure that each of those young people have a space where they feel valued and feel included within our services. We also have learning employability here, which is building skills and opportunities that support young people for the future. Safe and secure spaces is one that comes up across the sector really often, and makes sure that young people are given environments where they can thrive, where they feel supported not only by the facilities available, but by the staff and the projects taking place as well. We have physical and emotional well-being, which I know a lot of the organisations here are already delivering incredible work around, which is promoting mental health and healthy lifestyles and ensuring young people's physical and emotional well-being is supported in a holistic nature. And then finally, one that's quite new for the service is celebrating the sector. And this is something that's really well deserved and recognises the achievements and the high quality service that takes place across the VCS. So those 5 priorities are really what we're looking for in this Youth Empowerment Grant Programme. And the programme itself is open to VCS organisations who have a track record of delivering services to 6 to 19, but also that goes up to 25 for young people with SEND across the borough. So if your organisation is one of these organisations, you are delivering locally, you deliver with young people under 25, this is an opportunity for you to expand your services if it aligns with the priority areas. So the bit that you actually want to hear is about the grant program itself. So we have 3 grant streams within this. And the reason for this is we want to provide a really well-rounded service offer to children and young people. So I'll talk you through each of those briefly now, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. So the first opportunity is main grants, and that is longer term core funding for the sector who delivers a minimum of 3 priority areas from the Youth Review. Then we have small grants, which is shorter term funding, around a year, for projects and activities that deliver at least 1 priority for the Youth Review. And then we have Making Space, which is again longer term funding for core and project activities, for core and projects funding that increases the inclusion of young people with special educational needs and disabilities. So we've got quite a breadth of services available here that can be funded, and applicants and organisations are able to apply for 3, but will only receive a maximum of 2. So to help reduce the amount of work that you are doing as organisations and balance your time, it's really important that you know that the strongest of these applications will be successful. And that means taking time to reflect on your services, the need of the children and young people, and also the criteria areas that we're looking for, which Nicola will cover later. And how your service aligns with the Youth Review. They're going to be key things that we're looking for. And so just be mindful of that as you're making your applications onto what streams you're applying for. We really kind of like mentioned, we want to make sure that all services are utilised and maximize to the best of their potential. So that includes council, public, and private sector resources through partnerships and collaboration. So there's a lot of space for you to go into what you want there, including use of buildings, partnerships that you're developing, relationships that you're building, and including those within your grant applications as well. So I want to take you through the main grant first, and we have a pot available of 757,000 per year. The grant length for these is 3 years as a starting point, and then a possible 2-year extension based on the monitoring, evaluation, and standard of service delivered. So the main grant provides this longer term core funding for play and youth services. This includes youth clubs, adventure play, junior clubs, and settings that supports young people's growth and development. It's really important here, and this is kind of what I'm getting to in terms of what are you looking to apply, that you demonstrate at least 3 of the 5 priority areas. There is option if you feel that you can deliver more of them, that's fine as well, but 3 is a minimum. As we're trying to be less prescriptive with these grants, we haven't given a maximum amount to the main grants, but it is really important to note that previous grants have been awarded for up to £40,000 per year. Our reasoning for not having a maximum criteria around this or a maximum grant amount for this is because we want to see what organisations are delivering and what they think their services is worth, but we also want to make sure that these are in line across the sector. As part of the main grants, you can express an interest in leasing council properties. So that is Lancaster Youth Hub, Goulburn Youth Club, Chelsea Youth Hub, Canalside with Cremorne as a water sports site, Little Wormwood Adventure Playground, and Flashpoint Play Centre as well. So if you are interested in leasing one of these council buildings, there's opportunity in your application to detail that service and include that within your budget. We know that there might be organisations who are interested in leasing multiple sites. So that's why the main grant has, that's why in the main grant you're able to apply up to 4 times. And this is to support organisations who are delivering at multiple sites. So for example, if you are interested in leasing Lancaster Youth Hub and Goulburn Youth Club, we invite you to submit an application separately for each of those, so we're able to judge each individual application as its own. We encourage partnerships from this. Again, like we said, we want to maximize the use of services. And any questions you have at the main grant, please drop them in the chat and we'll cover them later on. For the properties available, at the moment, we are collecting all the information around utilities, around costs, around partnerships, around services already taking place in that borough, in that building. And we will have property packs available for each of those buildings at the open days that we're covering. I'll talk more about the open days a bit later, and Nicola will cover them as well. But it's just important to note that more information will be coming around this because we want applications to be as informed as possible. The next grant we have is the small grants, and these are 1-year grants of up to £8,000 or up to £10,000 for projects that support a high proportion of disabled young people. The reason there's 2 different maximum amounts here is because we know that services that include young people with additional needs or disabilities are often more expensive, as you might need more resources or one-to-one support. So please note that in applications that do go for the full 10,000 that do support a high proportion of disabled young people, we will be looking for reasonable adjustments made in your budget to support those additional needs there. The grant pot itself is £100,000, and we have support in partnership from John Lyons Charity of £50,000, and the other £15,000 is from RBKC. £50,000 of this is ring fenced for organisations with a turnover under 250,000 per year. And this is to make sure that organisations that are really small, the grassroots organisations in our community, are still able to access funding and receive money for the services that they deliver. For people who've received this funding before or know what it is, this used to be Young KNC's Our Choice and Culture, Heritage and Identity programme. So it's been a slight shift in funding for us. Been a slight shift in strategy for us as we've moved it within the small grants to be able to give everybody the same opportunity at the same time. We still have the same focus areas around culture, heritage, and identity, and our choice, which is about girls and young women, LGBT young people, which is included in the inclusivity priority area of the youth review. If you are applying for a small grant, you do have to demonstrate that your service is reaching at least one of the five priority areas. But the small grants will be available to apply to each year to make sure that services across the borough are covered. The last one in our grant program is Making Space, and this is our program to support young people, children and young people aged 6 to 25 with special educational needs and disabilities to participate in mainstream youth and play services. So this one is a 3-year grant with a possible 2-year extension, similar to the main grants with the opportunity to extend the contract, extend the grant based on the delivery of services and the monitoring and evaluation completed. We have a maximum amount of 20,000 for this, which includes training, staff costs, equipment, running services, and anything that it really takes to make sure that young people with additional needs are included within your services. So we're not connected to priority areas in this one, but this is a very focused grant on supporting young people with special educational needs and disabilities. So this is available for organisations that have a specific focus on that. Some key dates that we've got coming up. Applications opened last week on the 10th, and next week we have open house sessions for applicants interested in leasing the council buildings. Information about this will follow, but we have I think it's a 1 hour slot or 1.5 hours at each of the sites available for applicants to come in, to see the facilities, to ask questions, and property services will be there to help answer any key questions you might have around utilities, rents, repairs, or any property related questions. And it gives you the opportunity to kind of see what's going on face to face with the services. On the Thursday, the 3rd of October, we have a session on developing policies and procedures for the grant program. This will be run by Nicola, and we really, really, really encourage applicants who are interested in applying to attend this session, because we want to make sure that you have the best possible opportunity to apply and that your policies and your procedures are of high quality before the program starts. All of the applications will close on Friday, the 8th of November at 11:59 p.m. And that is a very hard deadline. So applicants that come in after that won't be accepted. So I really, really, really recommend you to get that in beforehand, because otherwise you won't be able to submit your application. What comes next is our assessment and delivery, and we will be conducting all due diligence and recommendations via panel of professionals by the 29th of November, which from then, from December to February, we will be doing visits to applicants with a group of local young people, our young ambassadors who are trained in grant assessment. In March, the council will sign off on all successful applicants and issue contracts, and then you can start delivering your programs on the 1st of April in line with the financial year. So as for the applications, all of the information can be found on our website under the Youth Empowerment Grant Programme, and Zena will make sure that you have all the details of this afterwards for when you want to go and have a snoop around and see what's going on. We're taking applications via Plinth, which is an online system used by Young KNC to support the grant process. It basically means that you are then able to view your applications, submit your applications online, and then also complete your monitoring via the same system. It's something we're really doing to try and reduce the strain on the VCS and make the process as easy as possible. It's a bit of a learning curve for us all, but resources can be found online, and we'll also be joined shortly by Tom, who will take us through Plinth. I think Tom's with us now, actually, so I'll get onto that next. But that will take us through how you can do it and how you can find the information. If at any point you have any questions about Plinth throughout the application process, drop myself a line, drop Nicola a line, drop a member of the commissioning team an email or a call, and we're all here to kind of answer you any questions that you might have around that. Like I said, applications close on the 8th of November. But now, if you're ready, we thought it'd be helpful for Tom to take you through the process of applying online, just so you can all get that kind of face to face of what is coming, and ask any questions whilst we can. Um, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now.
Cool. Shall I
Me?
share mine?
Yes, please. Thanks, Tom.
Great. Lovely to meet everyone. Yeah. So yeah, I'm Tom from Plinth. And yeah, as Neve said, Plinth is a system that Young KNC is using to manage their grant program, both on the application side and on the monitoring and reporting later on. So we, as an organization, we provide this platform to around about 1,000 different organizations across the country each month. And it can do lots of different things, but I'm mostly going to focus on how you would get access to the grant application form, how you'd fill it out, and how you might be able to come back to it if you want to make any changes at a later date. So I'll walk through that as if I was setting up a new account for a new organization. I'll obviously use some fake information so it's not causing havoc. And then I'll show you how you can do that. So the first step for this is if when you're using when you're going to the information about the grants on the Young KNC website, you'll get to a page that looks a bit like this, and you can scroll down and see the information about all the different grant programs and see all those grants that Neve was just talking about. If you read this information and you decide which one you're applying for, if you click on this apply button, it's going to take you to a page on Plinth. And this will give you a bit more detail about the grant, all the things that we've just been talking about. It'll also give you some information about any template forms that you might need to fill out and upload as part of your application. And it will give you an option to print the application form even before you start. So if you click this button, it will give you an option to print all of those questions. Now, when you first get here, it's going to ask you to either create an account or log in. So if you haven't got a Plinth account before, which I think most of you won't, and if you click this button, it's going to ask you to first create a user account and then add a little bit of information about your organization. So I'm going to create an organization under an account of Test Young KNC. And this, I'll just create a fake email address, but you should use a real one when you actually do it. The password, obviously make sure that the password is nice and secure. Much more sensible if you can use one that you don't use in other places. But I'll just create a short one because it's not going to do much. So I'm going to sign up. It's going to ask me whether I'm a charity registered in England, Wales, or Scotland. You don't have to be to sign up. The only reason why this is useful is we can find a bit of information about an organization. So if any of you, I can see someone here, we can search through some of the charities and charity commission, which will save a little bit of time. If you're not, or if you can't find your charity in this search, just click this button and put it in here. So just type in the name of your organization directly. So you don't have to be a charity for this to work, but it can be helpful if you are to save a bit of time. If you click next, it's going to ask you for a link to your website. It's up to you whether you decide to do that or not. If you don't, you can go through, it might ask where you work. So this could be, you might want to just put Kensington and Chelsea in here, but if you work in a few other boroughs or if you work in specific wards of Kensington and Chelsea, you can type those in and be a bit more specific. Once done that, it'll take you back to this page. But now you'll see that you've got a different button. You've got the next button here. So you can click that and it's going to take you to the questions that you actually get on the proposal, on the grant application. So you'll have the kind of the organization name, the address, charity commission number, turnover, website address, all of those things. You can go through and fill these in at any time you want. As you type in names in here, so it's not going to let me click next because I'm not going to type them all in. It will save some of the things that you've written as soon as you click this save for later button. So if you click that, once you've done a bunch of work, if you click that button, you can come back to it later and all of those answers that you put in will still be there. You can go through all of the questions before you start typing, so you can look through and see all of it. You've got these questions which have a sort of maximum word count. On the upload documents questions, this is where you would just want to upload a document that you see here. Those template forms are on the cover page that you saw earlier. So if you download those before you start, that can be really useful. If you go through all of these, you'll see all of the questions that you might need to fill out. Some of them are just words, some of them are drop downs, some of them are files, as you can see. There's also a little extra handy feature. If you use Google Docs a lot across your organization, you can click this button and it will export all of the questions into a Google Doc as with any answers that you filled out already. So you can share that around your team if that's how you kind of like filling out these applications. Um, when you get to the final page, you'll have the option to fill out this declaration that you understand that all of these things you've written are true and that you're aware of the consequences of serious misrepresentation and all these other things. And then there's a submit button. So you'll need to submit that as it says before the deadline. And if after that deadline, you won't be able to submit anymore. Once you've submitted, you'll be able to print all of your answers. So you'll be taken to a page that looks a bit like this, where you can click print, and you can get everything and you can save it as a PDF. You'll also be sent a confirmation email with a link to that when you submit. So, well, if you get to this page, you have a look through, you download these files, and you want to have a look and come back to the application that you saved. Once you save it, I'll just quickly turn this on. It will show up on this tab here. So as soon as I've done a save, let me demonstrate that quickly. So if I just type in some nonsense for all of these, and sorry that you have to deal with this later. There you go. So if I just, I've got all those, I've saved them, I'll be able to come back to them. If I click here, I'll now see that this application form that I've started is already here, and I can click edit and come back to it, and it will have all of my answers that I filled out here. Of course, you might want to make multiple different responses to the same application form if you're applying for multiple different buildings. And if you want to do that, you can just use this button here to start a new response. What that's going to do is going to empty out all of these answers, but it's not deleted them. You can come back to them. If you click on that, you'll be able to see all of the other responses that you've done already. So if you click this button, you can start again, and then you can search through all of the different applications you're making just by clicking on the different numbers in this drop down. So you can see those really easily. So yeah, that's kind of in the main how you can make an application for one of these application forms on Plinth. You can make applications for multiple other different grants. So if you go from the grant guidance, you can click on the different apply buttons and choose the other grants and apply to those, and they will all show up on this page for you, so you can come back and edit them whenever you need to. And whenever you go to that link, it will save all of the answers that you've gone to. The final thing to be aware of is you can work on this across multiple different people in the same organization. So if you are if you start filling it out and you want someone else in your organization to finish it off, as long as you click save for later at the bottom here, if you click on the settings and go into this admin section, you can put in the email address of someone else that you want to come along and work on the grant application form with you. I would just select them and put them as a user, put in their email address and click invite. That's all you need to do. They'll be emailed a link with some instructions about how to get set up, and then they'll be able to find those grant applications as well. When you register, you will also get a few other things that pop up on the left here. You don't have to use these to be able to fill out the actual grant application itself, but these essentially are a series of other tools that you can use for your organization if you want to use them as a database, a CRM, case management system, or a way of doing some impact measurement. And so it's useful to know what those are, but they're not vital for making the application itself to Young KNC. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions on that, especially if there's anything that I've missed out.
Thank you.
Just one other thing, if you do already have a Plinth account, which I think a couple of people on the call might do, you don't need to create a new one to do this. You can just log in with the existing one that you've already got, which will hopefully be quite clear on the application form when you do it.
Brill. Thank you very much, Tom.
Sorry.
I am going to take us back to the grant program and give it over to Nicola now, who will walk us through the next bit.
Thank you to Tom and the team at Plinth for getting us up and running on Plinth. Just to say, we've chosen Plinth because it's really excellent for record keeping and particularly for voluntary organisations to evidence impact, and it is a free database. And so whilst it's always work putting things on a database, it is actually a really, really useful tool for the voluntary sector as well. Okay, so on with the next bit of the presentation. Support, what support is available? Tom briefly showed us the information that's available on the Young KNC website. You'll find that information in the section that's headed What's New, News, and you'll find all the information about the grant programme there. Two documents that I encourage you to read really carefully. One is the grant guidelines, and the other is the FAQs. One of the most common mistakes people make when they apply to us is not having properly read and understood the grant guidance. And one of the things, what we'll be assessing you on really is whether you've met that guidance or not. So it's really critical to just take a bit of time and read that guidance really, really carefully before you start writing your application. We're aware that this is quite complicated because it's a big grant programme. There are 3 different streams, and there are also leases for buildings that are up for grabs here. And so there's quite a lot of information here. And so do just take that time to read and digest before you get going. On the buildings, we will be holding open days next week. The dates are in the FAQs for the programme, but we will be doing open days at visits at buildings on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday next week. I believe there's a question in the chat about the lease terms and the conditions for the properties. Property services from RBKC will be putting those in writing for us for each of the buildings where leases are available. So we should have that information for you in writing by next week. The information will also go on our website, along with any updates that we get to the FAQs as we go along. Those will go on the website because we anticipate that we may get some updates as people ask more questions about this programme. As Niamh mentioned, we strongly recommend coming to the Policies and Procedures workshop. This is because one of the things we're really looking for here is high quality policies and procedures. We're very conscious that this programme is very much about running youth clubs, community adventure play, junior clubs, where you have a duty of care to be looking after other people's children. And so we need really robust safeguarding and health and safety and risk assessments in place for that. Unfortunately, we can't offer one-to-one support for this grant programme, but we will respond to questions. If you've got questions about it, you can contact us by email. And any questions that we answer to one person will be shared on the website for everybody else. Okay, next slide. Okay, so to give you an idea of what we're looking for when we're assessing your application so that you can think about and tailor what you're writing for us, there are 3 main things that we're looking for. One is the due diligence, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. One is the extent to which your application meets the selection criteria, and the other is what young people's views are and feedback is on your provision, because we'll be visiting all the shortlisted applicants with a group of young ambassadors who we've trained up to work with us on assessing and monitoring grant programs. Okay, so this first slide is about some of the information that you will need to provide for us. Hopefully it's fairly self-explanatory: safeguarding policies and procedures, recent bank statements, insurance certificates, budget form, and also a risk assessment for the proposed service. And the risk assessment is a new requirement from us. It's not something we've asked for before, and this is why we'll be running the session on policies and procedures to try and give you a bit of extra support with that if you want or need that. In addition to that, for the main grants programme and making space, we want to see an EDI form so that we have an idea of your organisation's reach, also the training log and your DBS register, health and safety policy and complaints procedure. Part of our emphasis on health and safety is following on from the Grenfell inquiry report, where it was really quite lacking the focus on health and safety. So whilst I know that some people will experience this as bureaucracy, hopefully you understand why we're putting such a strong emphasis on health and safety and risk assessment this time round. Okay, next slide, please. Ooh, I've got a blank page. There we go, lovely, okay. So telling you a little bit more about due diligence, which is the first area that we will be assessing these applications on. We're bringing together a panel of professionals who all have experience of working with the voluntary sector in the borough from different council departments and other voluntary organisations and funders who work with the VCS. The reason we're doing this is because we really want to look hard at track record, so that we can choose the strongest applications to go ahead and fund. What we'll be looking at as part of the due diligence process is, first of all, safeguarding and health and safety, which I've mentioned already. Second thing is track record, so making sure that your records with Companies House and Charity Commission are up to date, but also that you have a strong track record of working with children and young people, preferably locally here in RBKC. Governance is the third area that we'll be looking at. We're looking to see good governance processes, diverse boards of trustees that are reflective of the local community, up-to-date insurance information. And the fourth area is communication, your comms. So, we expect to be able to find your safeguarding policies and health and safety and complaints policies published on your website. We also expect your entry on the Our City website, for instance, to be up to date. We expect you to be communicating what your offer is really well. Okay, next slide. And as I said earlier, a major part of the assessment process for us will be getting the views of local young people. Some of you who've applied to us before know that we work with a group of young ambassadors. Neve recruits and trains them up really, really well to go and visit the applicants, because we know that what we read on paper isn't always the same as actually going and experiencing something for ourselves, and it makes a huge difference to actually visit the applicants and for young people to be able to ask their questions. So to give you an idea, the young people will come up with their own questions for you, but the kinds of things they've looked at in the past are they would want to see around your premises where you're working. They're interested in whether it's clean and welcoming. They would like to meet your staff if possible, have a chat with them, see what they're like, and ideally they would also like to meet some of the children and young people that you work with to get their feedback directly about why it's great coming to your service. For us, this is a really important part of the assessment process, and it's a part that can change the outcome of the application. The other reason it's in there is because we know that some groups have got professional fundraisers and others don't, and we want to try and level the playing field as much as possible and open up this process also to people for whom maybe English isn't their first language or they're neurodiverse. But they're offering excellent services, which maybe isn't as strongly reflected in a written application form. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is the third area that we'll be looking at, and this is the selection criteria that we've worked on really hard over the summer with RBKC and our partners there. Some of these we've mentioned already: quality and track record. The first really important area is looking at to what extent your application helps to deliver the priorities of the youth review. And let's just see if I can remember them offhand. So the first one is inclusivity, and that's inclusion particularly of young people with SEND, also girls and young women, global majority, LGBT++. Second area is learning and employability. So we're looking for organisations that can deliver really strong outcomes for children and young people in terms of their education, in terms of getting them into jobs, in terms of developing those life skills and those work skills that are going to help them to progress in these areas. Third area is physical and emotional health and well-being, obviously massively important area for children and young people at the moment in the borough and elsewhere. Fourth area is safe and secure spaces, keeping young people safe. And final area is celebrating and strengthening the sector via meaningful partnerships. I think, as we mentioned earlier, partnerships really, really important here. And you'll find more information about the priorities of the Youth Review on our website. Another area here that I want to be really honest with you about is, the history of this funding is that it was used to fund youth clubs and community adventure play, and we still want to see really, really strong sufficiency of play provision and youth club provision in the borough. And in particular, we're working with RBKC here. We're looking at the leases for a number of council properties, and we want to see really strong, thriving offers for children and young people from those council-owned buildings. So do think very carefully when you're applying for a main grant as to whether you're delivering some of these selection criteria. We will probably fund a small number of projects from the main grants fund that are not necessarily in a council building, but I suspect most of the projects that we fund through main grants will be to do with delivering really high quality services from these council buildings. With Making Space and small grants, we have much more flexibility to deliver any service from anywhere in the borough. Next area, you'll notice that the ones that we think are really quite significant and important, we've put in bold. That is a clue. Gaps that were identified in the recent youth review. So one of the gaps is around girls and young women. Another gap is around provision for children and young people with SEND. A third gap that we've not mentioned yet is about structured activities for older young people. That was one of the bits of feedback that we got from young people who took part in the consultation of the youth review was not enough for us. Basically, that kind of older secondary school age, maybe 14 to 17 kind of age range. And the last area, young people come back to us very, very consistently about this, is we want a job. What can you do to help us get into jobs and get better results, get the results that we need to get us into a good job. Next area we'll be looking at is to do with sufficiency and geographical spread throughout the borough. We need this offer to be accessible for as many children and young people as possible. We know that we have gaps in the south of the borough and in the middle of the borough, and so we will be wanting to try to fund more in those areas through this programme. I think we've already mentioned the importance of diversity, inclusion and SEND, but that is obviously one of our selection criteria. Again, another area that is important to us, because this is RBKC that we are working with, is that you're working with local stakeholders, so that includes libraries, parks, leisure centres, but also early help, community safety, providers that you should be working in partnership with to support some of the most vulnerable children and young people. Importance of policies and procedures, we've already mentioned, and good communications, we've already mentioned. So these are some of the things that we're looking for when we're assessing these grants. Okay, once we've done this gargantuan assessment effort, we will provide feedback for all of the applicants, whether you've been successful or unsuccessful, including feedback from young people if you've been visited by young people. So that for planning purposes, the grants will commence on the 1st of April 2025. I think there was a question in the chat about time for mobilisation. We're planning to assess the applications for main grants first, so that hopefully we can give them 4 to 6 weeks time for mobilisation, and we'll then go on to assessing the applications for Making Space and small grants after that. For the main grants, your contract, if you're successful, will be between RBKC and also Young KNC, very similar to the model that we already use for holiday activities and food. So some of you who've delivered holiday activities and food will be already familiar with that. Grant agreements for small grants and Making Space will just be between the successful applicants and Young KNC. Next slide. monitoring and evaluation, I know you love it. Let's just say that there will be monitoring and evaluation. It will probably drive you and us crazy, but things just to note. So we will be using Plinth for the monitoring and evaluation. So do take this opportunity to familiarize yourself with it. The reason we've chosen it is because we think it's a really fantastic database for evidencing the impact for voluntary sector children and young people's projects. And we hope that that will help you to bring in funding from other funders and not just us, because it really is a good tool for that evidencing of your impact. We will also be looking for monitoring every 6 months for the main grants programme, which will be carried out through a report, and you'll also be visited by the council's contract managers, Alison and Lorraine, who many of you already know are really, really helpful and supportive to all of the providers that the borough funds. Small grants, and we'll be asking for a short report at the end of the project, and Making Space will be asking for a 6-monthly report. We may well also visit any of the successful applications, either visits from Young KNC or visits from us with our Young Ambassador team. Next slide. That's it, hooray. Any questions?